Good day to you all. I'm Vihanga Amarakoon. I'm a doctoral candidate at Griffith University, Australia. So today I am presenting the masterclass for IBF under the topic The Future of Disaster Risk Reduction, Nature-Based Solutions. So here is the outline of my presentation today. So firstly, I'll be providing an introduction to disaster risk reduction. Then I will explain the current landscape of nature-based solutions for disaster risk reduction. Then I will be explaining some successful stories about EcoDRR. And then I will provide some recommendations for further improvement. And finally, I will summarize the presentation and also give some answers for anticipated questions. And then there will be references for further study for you all. So introducing to the concept of disaster risk reduction. So as you can see, disasters are in our vicinity. On everyday basis, we hear about disasters around the globe, like floods, landslides, and then volcanic eruptions, earthquakes. So we see these around the world on a daily basis, and they are increasing in frequency and intensity. So the importance of managing these disasters, especially the concept of disaster risk reduction, has been deemed as important in COP26 meeting as well. So in all these COP meetings, these disasters have been considered as climate change amplifying risks. And also, they are seeing a significant increase in the intensity and frequency of weather-related disasters with far-reaching consequences. This explains the need for proper disaster risk reduction. So DRR has been explained in Sustainable Development Goals as well, especially with related to 5 different goals. Disaster risk reduction has been explained. So especially with goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities, then goal number 13, climate action, goal number 1, poverty, goal number 2, zero hunger, and goal number 15, life on land. Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction was established in 2015 along with the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is sort of like an accepted framework worldwide for the disaster risk reduction concept. And there are 7 global targets, 13 guiding principles. So all these mechanisms help for reducing the disaster risk around the world and prioritizing the safety of the communities. So to explain further about what disaster risk is, so as you can see, disaster risk is mainly composed of several factors like hazard, vulnerability, exposure, and resilience. So these factors are like they impact on disaster risk at different levels. So hazard means the natural occurrence or the natural situation. So for example, like if you are living near a river, then there's a natural hazard of you getting caught in a flood because of the monsoonal rains and the river overflowing. So there's a natural risk or the natural hazard is that we cannot get rid of. That is the natural occurrence. And then vulnerability is caused by poverty, environmental degradation, and hazardous living conditions. That means how much you are vulnerable for a specific disaster. So as you can see, if you are living near a river, then if your house is made out of poor building material, then there's a higher chance for your house to be impacted by that specific flood. And exposure is how much you're exposed to this disaster. So it is mainly caused by inappropriate settlement locations. So for example, if you are living near a river, very close to a river bank, then of course you're highly exposed to a specific flood situation. So all these factors, hazard, vulnerability, and exposure, these factors increase the disaster risk. And resilience. Resilience is the ability of a community to recover from the negative impacts of the disaster. That means how fast you can rebound from disaster impacts. So resilience actually is a factor that reduces the disaster risk. That means when the resilience increases, disaster risk decreases. So as you can see, there's a clear linkage between ecosystems, environment, and disasters. So within this concept of nature-based solutions, actually this connection is used. As you can see, there are several ecosystems on this earth, and also using these ecosystems, there are several services provided by these ecosystems, like provision and services, regulating services, cultural services, and supporting services. So among these services, regulating services are very relevant to our topic today, because these regulating services from a specific ecosystems modify the disaster risk or modify the hazards such as floods and drought. That means when the environment is at a good level without any degradation, this environment and ecosystem provides these services which will eventually reduce the disaster risk. So if the environment is degraded, on the other hand, then these services will be limited and we will face a higher disaster risk. So this interlinkage is used in the concept of nature-based solutions. So explaining the current landscape of nature-based solutions for disaster risk reduction. So this image clearly shows what nature-based solutions are. So as you can see, when there's a mangrove belt across along this coastal line, then there's a clear way of avoiding floodwaters and then all this coastal flooding. But when there's no mangrove belts, there's no way of getting your communities protected from these floodwaters. So the main features of nature-based solutions is that they embrace nature conservation norms, that they are based on natural environment. And also they can be implemented alone or in an integrated manner with other technological and engineering solutions. That means together with dam building and other IT methods, we can use them together with nature-based solutions. And they are determined by site-specific natural and cultural context. That means these nature-based solutions are kind of deep-seated within the natural environment and also the culture and the social life of the communities. And they are applied at the landscape scale, and also they are an integral part of the overall design of policies. And also, not mentioned here that one of the main features of nature-based solutions is that they are very cost-effective. Because rather than these technological and engineering solutions, these nature-based solutions are based on natural environment. So with very low cost, we can like build up a good protection that is even better than those technological and engineering solutions that we already have. So nature-based solution is an umbrella concept for all those ecosystem-related approaches, not only for disaster risk reduction. So it provides solutions for climate change adaptation, ecosystem-based adaptation, natural infrastructure, green infrastructure, integrated water resources management, for all these concepts. So here, for our purpose, for disaster risk reduction purpose, we can see one component under nature-based solutions, as you can see in this table, ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction. That means based on the ecosystems or using ecosystems, we can manage these disasters. So the main two features of ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction or eco-DRR is that one, that they reduce the exposure of the communities to disaster events. That means they reduce how these communities are exposed to these disasters. That, for examples, that wetlands specifically store excess floodwaters and thereby reduce the devastating effects of the floods. And the second benefit is that they act as protective natural barriers against common hazards. Now, for example, now coastal wetlands act as buffers against coastal disasters such as storm surges, erosion, and flooding. So ECODR are successful stories where they have been implemented successfully. Let's see which are them. So we can see some very good examples at global level, especially use of the mangrove belts as buffers against tsunami in 2004. This was implemented in Thailand. So along these coastal belts in specific provinces in Thailand, very strong mangrove belts have been established. So these mangrove belts have provided protection from the tsunami that occurred in 2004. And the mangrove belts were destroyed. They were severely damaged, but they were able to lessen the damage to the inland coastal communities. So this is one of the best examples of how mangrove belts can protect you from all these coastal hazards. And then another successful story we can hear from Switzerland. So there has been this specific slope which has been subjected to snow avalanches for more than 30 years. Now in 1975, the slope has been reforested. They have started reforesting this slope. And now, after this reforestation has been successfully finished, now the avalanches are hardly occurring in this slope. So the economic value of this forest protecting the rail network and all the other ecosystems is nearly 2 billion US dollars per year. So you can see how important that is. And then when we go to some Sri Lankan examples, some eco-DRR successful stories. So restoration of wetlands to manage urban floods in Colombo, Sri Lanka can be a very good example. So there has been a clear link established between the loss of wetlands and low-lying areas to the increased flood events and the impacts. Therefore, identifying this clear link, restoration of wetlands has been deemed important. Therefore, a project to identify important wetlands in the Colombo metropolitan area and restoring their quality was started. And then 2 wetland parks were established under this, named as Diasaro Park and the Baddagana Wetland Park. So the revenue potential from the improved wetland system is up to $13 million annually. And then one of the main examples of eco-DRR successful stories, this is one of the most ancient eco-DRR examples. We can see the tank cascade system or the Ellangava system of Sri Lanka. So this is mainly used to mitigate droughts in the dry zone of the country. So the main principle within this tank cascade system is there's a network of small to large scale tanks. And within these tanks, recycling and reusing water is performed. So what happens here is during the rainy season, one of the larger tanks receive rainwater, and once that spill off, the spill of water will go to those small tanks, and it will be flowing through all these systems of canals and the small scale tanks. Therefore, even during the dry period, the farmers in the dry zone of Sri Lanka can continue their paddy cultivation without any disturbance because all the water has been very well saved within this tank cascade system. And also it provides sort of like providing a service by controlling the seasonal flooding and also avoiding the droughts in the dry zone. So for recommendations for further improvement, so I can give some good recommendations for improving the eco-DRR measures further at global and all the other national levels. So one thing is mainstreaming and scaling up from local level to more nationally derived programs. It is important because most of these eco-DRR stories are at the grassroots level. And also ensuring a gender-sensitive involvement is also important because disasters seem to impact more towards women and other gender minorities. Therefore, involving these minorities and other women in these eco-DRR measures is important. And also translation of global policies into national and local level policies is important because most of these eco-DRR policies are still at global level and we have to translate them as suitable as for our national and local levels. And obtaining sufficient and scalable data about these ecosystem DRR projects is important. And also, as you can see, there's a time lag between establishment of these eco-DRR projects and then getting the use of it. Now, for example, if you start reforesting a slope, it might take 2 to 3 decades for that forest to grow properly. So within that period, how can we minimize the disaster impact or the avalanche impact? So there should be some ways to prevent that. So reducing the time lag between enabling the protection given by eco-DRR is important. And also considering the impact of climate change on the ecosystems is important because now we are using the ecosystems themselves to get some service to reduce the disaster impacts. But ecosystems are also impacted by climate change. Therefore, we have to consider that impact as well when we are establishing eco-DRR, that the ecosystems have to be very climate resilient. And also developing some indicators for eco-DRR is also important. So here is a summary of the presentation I did today. So there's an increasing trend of disasters worldwide. And also the importance of disaster risk reduction is mentioned in SDGs and also at COP26. And the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction provide some basic concepts for mitigating disasters. And there's a clear link between nature and disasters, which is used in the concept of nature-based solutions, which is a novel concept. And under nature-based solutions, we have ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, which have provided some successful solutions to reduce the disaster impacts worldwide. And also there are some benefits and also some considerable challenges in establishing eco-DRR measures. So in the future, we have to conquer those challenges as well. So here are some anticipated questions about this presentation, which you might have right now, like how do we measure or prove the cost effectiveness of nature-based solutions compared to traditional methods? And also why these nature-based solutions are still not mainstreamed in the disaster risk reduction policies. So you can have very clear answers in these slides. And about like how can we ensure the community participation in these kinds of projects, and also how about how to reduce the time lag of nature-based solutions taking effect. So these questions you might have right now, and also like if climate change is affecting ecosystems themselves, how reliable are nature-based solutions in the long run? So these questions you might have right now, so you can see the answers in the slide. And here are some of the references for you to further study. So as you can see, I have provided with all the resources I have used in this presentation. So you can refer to these resources and further study about it. So before finishing the presentation, just like to give a small message here. In times of crisis, natural world is a joy and a solace. It produces the comfort that can come from nothing else. Therefore, protecting the environment for the sake of our future generations is out of utmost importance. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.